Good evening, fellow Honklers from the Republic of Kyrgyzstan. I think I might have seen another bat. My cat got a bat. Oh, yes. Yes, there is a bat around. Just flew over me. My cat picked up a bat. Probably about 4 days ago. Anyway. Outside here in the cool air. Before I get on to talking about concrete shelters and the like, I want to impress a few ideas on you from different sources and concepts that will help those of you who are having trouble holding on. Now, I gather there's some doomers who are having trouble accepting the clown world, basically. They can't quite find their honk. And so I got a few words of advice for those who can't find their honk, who are just still stuck as a doomer. You know, really the point we're at, ultimately, no matter what these idiots ever say, the land whale and her friends, the pink-haired feminist and associates, no matter what they say, ultimately we're going to run the show. We're going to win at the end of the day. It's just inevitable. Quite simply put, we have Generation Z who is on our side, and they're more hardcore than we are. Now, some of these people might be 13, 15, whatever. You realise something. In 5 years' time, their time will come. It will be their day, or will be damn close to being their day. 5 years, maybe 8 years at max. You just got to let the circus play out for a bit more. And our day will come. And quite simply, you shouldn't be worried about the circus playing out. You know, many of us who can honk are just laughing at it. It's not so laughable if you are one directly affected by it. If you end up facing 30 days in the can because you called the she or he or she or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's ma'am! That type of bullshit. Now it seems Europe is sinking quicker than the United States, and Australia is... you go into the capitals and they're trying to keep up, but the whole country as a whole, nah. No, we're not even there. And the fact is that with a bit of assistance, it's one of those things that's an undercurrent more amongst city people, but even a lot of city people. I'll just stand there and tell you, there's no such thing as political correctness in 1991. These people are all idiots. We shouldn't have these people here to begin with, or whatever. There's a lot of them that are fairly... if you gave them the horn, they would honk. You know what I'm saying? But in essence, it's all only just around the corner, and it is not a time to panic. It is a time to prepare for, I don't want to use the old phrase preppers use, but it may well be the shit hitting the fan. It's one of these things that if you said the wrong thing about something blah blah blah, and you're looking down, you know, it's some serious problems due to not calling the he or she or whatever the fuck that you're going down for, or making a couple of stupid bloomin' jokes about the man with a bad moustache or something. You know, it's... Just look at the United States. The joint has plenty of illegal immigrants, and plenty of them are flying under the radar, and they've done it for fucking decades. And you can too, you know. And in every collapse, there is an upside. What I'm trying to say is, every time there's a collapse, someone makes money. And you may want to think about that. And you may want to put yourself in the right position, place your cards the right way, so that, you know, you can pick up some cheap assets or get some, maybe not even picking up assets, maybe get some sort of gain from things falling to bits. Maybe even the state of California going bankrupt. You know, just... know a little bit about government auctions, know a bit about bankruptcy auctions. And you can be the guy in there buying at 5 cents on the dollar, 10 cents on the dollar. You know, there's people I've seen who have given themselves a bloody job for life by owning a frickin' bulldozer. And if you got a bulldozer, 10 cents on the dollar, guess what? Well, you may have sort of bought yourself a job, but, you know, then again, like, even if you don't like it, you can always sell the damn bulldozer. You know what I'm saying? You know, there's positions you can get yourself in that are going to benefit yourself quite well. And it's time to prepare for that, and it's time to prepare for the post-libtard world, the post-pink-haired feminist, you know, feminist land whale, whatever, you know, that post that, because every new society is built on the ashes and rubbles of the previous one, yeah, little thing to think about. It's another point I'd like to, for the camera down here, make. There's a DVD set I've got called the Lost World series. And, I don't know, I can't even actually remember what's on a lot of these other, you know, DVDs, but there's one particular DVD that I remember really well. I think it's like a 3-part series or a 5-part series, I can't remember. It doesn't actually matter. Lost Worlds, I believe it's made by the History Channel. And it's called The Lost World of Communism, this particular DVD. And it is absolutely intriguing because it charts and shows the collapse of an entire society that was a world empire in recent times. Quite possibly when you were alive, you may have been a baby. I can very briefly remember the Soviet Army on TV, probably back in about 1985. It's, you know, I more or less don't remember much of it at all, but it was interesting how some of these things fell to bits, and it sort of, it's like a lot of these things. It's a bit like the Arab Spring, you know. There's just one or two. Well, in this case, there was Lithuania, Estonia, and some other, the other little one. There's 3 tiny little countries. I mean, they're fucking tiny. You know, they're smaller than, man, some of these, honestly, some of these little countries, Lithuania, Estonia, and I forget the third one, but honestly, in some of our states, we could probably put about fucking 20 of these countries in some of the states of Australia because we have damn big states in this country. But All they wanted was just economic freedom. And I know that from other stuff that I've watched, but they got that. And they asked for economic freedom and well, we'll work it all out. And in that, they managed to bring up some bizarre hidden deal between, I think it's called the Ribbentrop Pact or something. Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, that was right. Between basically Molotov, who was the foreign minister in Russia at the time, and Ribbentrop, who was the foreign minister of the Nazis. And in that, you know, they found something that's a little bit dodgy to do with the fact that they were more or less, the Nazis more or less handed them over to the Russians or something like this. Long and short of it is, by hook or by crook, they got themselves some sort of self-determination and they declared themselves independent well, they broke away and they were shitting bricks, they were going to get invaded, and then sort of, you know, there were a few spits and spats, to be honest, with tanks driving in the street and stuff like that, but essentially speaking, the whole lot ended up collapsing, because once they had the balls to do it, everybody else followed. Bit like the Arab Spring. Now, back to this DVD. There were some of these ones that broke away, and the way they broke away was not that they booted out the government or done this to the government or done that to the government. The populace at large ended up going on strike nationally for a few weeks, and they come out and they said, well, we got this and we got that, and they basically said to them, you're backed by nobody, nobody's listening to you, we don't believe you to be our real rulers because you're a dictatorship to begin with. And they created their own parliament and had their own elections. They organised themselves and put in their own people, and then everybody just started paying taxes or whatever to this new government. They created a new world, a new society, simply by creating a new government structure and recognising it and obeying it and putting taxes to it and completely ignoring the old one. You know, and they no longer had any power because nobody gave them any power. Now, the pivotal moment in some of these things are really speaking where the military goes, because if the military suddenly decides that it's going to send in the fucking special forces and machine gun everybody to bits, it ain't going to be much of a new government. Having said that, if you have a handful of generals who side with you, there's quite a chance that the winds of change are in your favour, and that's it. It's all over. It's all over. On another note, I'm in Australia, the country which has had the most attempts at succession that you could ever bloody believe, of small places inside itself. And it's a lot, you know. My uncle actually personally knew people who tried to secede, and usually it was just one single farm and they were about to go bankrupt, and it was their way of throwing it back in the bank's face. Having said that, there's one that has done it successfully and done it for a bloody long time. In fact, almost as old as I am. I mean, this place is, I think it's about 35 years old. And it's known as Hutt River Province. Hutt space River space Province. And they essentially decided they've got to break away, and they did. The crazy thing is they've actually been offered a chair on the United Nations and friggin' everything. You wouldn't believe it, actually. And they've had government people there standing right at them saying, we could come in with the army and we could overtake your ass in 5 minutes. And they've sort of said, well, if you do that, we can take you to The Hague, known as the World Court, in, I believe it's Holland, Hague, something like that, Hauge, one of those, The Hague anyway. It's not that, it's known as the World Court, and that's where countries can go and take each other to court for disputes. There was a similar thing inside the British Empire known as the Privy Council, which was another thing I was told about, which is also still functionable. But having said all that, I think everything's just going to turn our way eventually anyway, because old Emperor Keck, I mean, it's not just him, it's there's a real chance there's going to be an actual European spring, as there was an Arab Spring. There's going to be a European style one, and basically it works like this. If Keck manages to get in again, and you got him right through to 2024, and at the same time you have some sort of a Arab Spring play out on the European Union, and there's there's some big people involved. I don't know if George Soros himself might have even said that they're pushing it a bit too hard, a bit too fast in the EU. I think he said that. But there's a number of high-up people who realise that they're pushing it a little bit too fast and hard. And the reality of the situation is that Italy wants out of the EU. And, when you finally have people leaving the EU for real, like if Brexit was to finally actually work, which it looks like it's not going to, but you have Italy, you have maybe France, you have just a couple of others there, maybe even Hungary changes its mind because it doesn't like the migrants, all you need is a few to go, and it's going to be the same as the Soviet Union. It's going to be the domino effect, a few pull out, and then all the others say, you know what, why the fuck are we in this? Why the hell are we having Brussels tell us how to run our personal shit? And boom, it pulls out and it's finished. It's game over. The whole lot just falls to the ground. And it's a chance to build again. And some people predict that's only 6 months away. I'm not so sure, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised if the EU was finished in 10 years. It may only be finished in 5 years. It may literally only be 6 months, a year, 2 years. There were people who were asked about East Germany. West Germans were asked about East Germany back in the day. And, this was in like 1988. And they had people who were like 40, 50, and they'd say, but do you think East Germany's going to ever collapse or end? And this is 1988, before things got real sour, before anything really started to happen. And, they said, oh, no, I don't think so, not in my lifetime. Not in my lifetime. In fact, there were some of them who were asked this stuff 9 months before the collapse of, East Germany, basically, given up, and, what's the guy with the name K? He basically resigned, and, it was all over, basically. 9 months before it was all over, people were asked, do you think East Germany will ever come to an end? Oh, no, not in the foreseeable future. Not while I'm alive. Not while I'm alive. These people, they're still fucking alive today. And it was all over in about 1991. And this is a thing. Early on in 1990, they couldn't see it ending for another 50 years. And yet it ended in 9 months. You never know how quick the shit's going to fall to bits until it actually starts falling to bits. You know, it's one of these things. Interesting thing on this DVD, it mentioned that there were, you know, women there who didn't like communism, and this woman said, you know, even though we didn't like the communist shithole we're in, every couple of weeks or whatever, we could get together. This bat's still flying around. We could get together. Whoa, getting close. We could get together, and we would turn the radio up a bit and have a few drinks and start talking in English and start talking about capitalism and democracy and whatever else they wanted to talk about, you know. And they sort of would create this little bubble of their own world and forget about communism and think about democracy, capitalism, have a few drinks, relax with friends, talk openly about whatever they wanted to talk about without fear of persecution. And all they needed to do was just, you know, get the right time once a fortnight or whatever, the right house, and turn the radio up a little bit so people couldn't hear so much what they were talking about, and then it was it, you know. And they said it was great to know that every couple of weeks they could just go inside a world of their own, away from the communist shithole they were living in, you know. And maybe if you're a doomer and you're having trouble finding your honk, it's a good idea to do that. You know, it's all this banging away on your phone. It's nothing compared to actually talking about it in real life. And my parents don't like talking politics, but me and my uncle, you know, we talk about things, have, you know, big talks about a lot of bizarre things involving politics. You know, I even had the theory of, you know, the long and short of it is the politicians, they don't stand for anything really over here, you know. And it's, I'm not saying they're neoconservatives and all they stand for is money, but then again, as much as they're not warmongers, you get the feeling the only thing they stand for is money. And they do get the hint sometimes that people get a bit sick of excessive migration and Sharia law, you know. They're trying to enforce it in Sydney amongst Muslims themselves, but it's like, we don't want any of this shit to happen ourselves. But at the same time, they're sort of suppressing the truth of some of the Muslim gang rapes and bullshit that have happened here, and they've deliberately squashed it. And the only way you can find out some of this stuff is on the internet, because the news, well, it's too inflammatory, so they're just all in unison just shut up about some of these things that happened. You know, as the case was nearing an end, then they come out with it. But it was like, oh, it's funny, you never put this on the news, but everybody found out via the damn internet. And then only as it's all coming to a close and the guy got a 57-year sentence or something, you know, the head leader of this gang rape mob, you know. But typical of the mainstream media, just to flatten any truth. But me and my uncle used to talk about a lot of things, you know. If the politicians have already just fucking left the country for dead, essentially, you know, just ignoring everyone and what people want, you know, we talk about things like secession. I had an idea that a lot of the capital cities in the country are all based on the beach, on the coast, and they're all on, most of them, except two, are all pretty much on the eastern seaboard. Okay, draw your line in your sand somewhere out there, and that's your side and this is our side. Bingo. We've got all the productive countryside, we've got all the mines, the fishing waters, a good heap of offshore gas rigs, and what have they got? A hatful of offshore gas rigs. Fuck all worth of fuck all. You know, and you, oh, well, you know, that's treason. No, it's succession, that's what it is, you know. And you can move ahead, and they can do what they want to do in their capital cities, but guess what? They just lost all their fucking resources from anything, you know, within 100 miles outside of the city limits, you know. Good luck to you, dickheads. You know. They'd have jack shit left, you know. Have plenty of brown coal and a fair bit of natural gas, at least in my state, you know, but the good shit, oh, that might have gone elsewhere. But anyway, just a few thoughts and ideas for those of you who are having trouble finding your honk or having trouble holding on, you know, and just realise it's all a process. And the closing thing I'd like to leave you with is one of the biggest fails of everything with all these blimmin' libtards and whatnot. And you know what that is? It's the same thing communism faced. Don't worry about it, someone else will take care of it. Don't worry about it, someone else will pay for it. Everybody else has to pay for it. Everybody else has to pick up after me. Everybody. The land of the pinkhead feminist and the university land whale is not going to be able to hold on because it will not be financially sustainable. They will not be able to pay their way, as almost every bloody socialist shitstorm never can. And if you decide that you're not paying for it, then it's even quicker that it can't pay for its way.